A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining our Homeopathy 24/7 podcast. We are going to be speaking to an array of international guests who will share their knowledge and experiences of homeopathy with you. We will discuss all types of subjects such as remedies, symptoms, and stories of health. No matter where you are with your homeopathic journey, we aim to inspire you on your quest to natural health and living. The podcast is brought to you by Mary Greensmith, the founder of Homeopathy 24/7, which is a global platform connecting you with a homeopath wherever you are in the world, 24 hours a day. So let's get started with today's chat. Please welcome Mary Greensmith.
Hello, thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm really pleased to welcome Jonathan Stallick. Jonathan, welcome.
Hello, Mary. How are you?
I'm good, and it's lovely to see you. And I understand you've got some really good feedback from some of your clients.
Did you see my blog today?
No, was that really good as well?
Because I decided to collect all a lot of the some of them that I put on Facebook. I sort of bring them all together because they're kind of quite interesting, and they're obviously encouraging. When I see them, it's like, oh wow, maybe I'm doing a halfway decent job, so that's good. But yes, yeah, I'm getting some. I think the maybe the case you're thinking of is the my Crohn's disease case, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And that was really a revelation for me and for the patient. So it's going to be great to talk about that.
Yeah, it's just so lovely when we do get the feedback, isn't it? And we do get the whole story and just an opportunity for you to actually discuss the whole process of working through homeopathy as opposed to other various different medicines and different ways of going about healing.
We were talking about that, weren't we, Mary, about the differences between some people sort of kind of lump them all together, all alternative medicines, but they are quite distinctive and distinct from each other. And homeopathy is, for anyone who's used maybe herbs or acupuncture, homeopathy really does bring something different and very valuable to the table, I think. And often, people have had results with those other medicines, but then get us a further result with homeopathy. So it's really worth remembering.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just lovely when you do have the opportunity to work with people who have tried different modalities and, as you say, certain things, and at certain times as well, it all comes together really nicely. So tell me a little bit about Crohn's and your experience.
Yes. So Crohn's is it's a nasty disease. I've got some experience of Crohn's, personal experience, because my mother has had Crohn's. Before I was born, she had Crohn's disease and then had an operation that removed parts of her bowel, and that had obviously a devastating effect on her whole digestion. Sort of constant diarrhea was one thing, and obviously when somebody has had a piece of their body, a vital piece of their body removed, it does change the goalposts, really. Because there's no way I'm going to be able to stop the diarrhea, because the bowel literally can't do its full job. So there's no way that's going to stop. But we can help the ill effects from the diarrhea. For example, there's exhaustion that comes from constant loss of fluids. And she's done really, really well. All through the years, she's had a lot of China is one remedy, cinchona bark. And that's been her mainstay, really, and has really, really helped her. So every time she gets into a dip, energy wise, that's been helpful. And there've been sort of quite a few other remedies as well, keeping some sort of balance, basically, and some kind of helping recover better from any sort of flare-ups.
Yes, of course, because of course so many of these diagnoses It's, a long-standing chronic disease that develops slowly, and then you're affected by real acute flares consistently and repetitively.
That's right. Quite often people come to me and they've kind of done a fair job, and this is in this, you'll see, your podcast audience will, when we play the video of the interview of this Crohn's patient, he actually did a fair job at kind of keeping at least the flares under control. And he sort of at least was able to calm things down with herbal medicine and certain things like slippery elm and that sort of thing. But nevertheless, what that didn't treat and what that didn't cure was the sensitivity. I mean, he has a lot of sensitivity to all kinds of foods, and of course it didn't treat that, and so he was still very, very sensitive. If he ate the wrong thing, he would still get a terrible effect. And that is where homeopathy comes in, because we can actually treat the sensitivity.
Yes.
It's a bit like people come maybe for hay fever, they've been taking antihistamines, and of course the antihistamines can keep it under control, but what it doesn't do, it doesn't cure.
No.
Really, that is our aim, I think, as homeopaths, is to actually, and people don't realize that. They think, oh well, homeopathy is great just for mild coughs and colds, but for chronic disease, if we get the right remedy, we can actually think of a cure. In many cases, not every case, but in many cases, we can actually get at least close to a cure. Which means that we actually treat the sensitivity, and that then the person is not bothered at all by the problem. So yeah, that's my aim anyway.
Okay, absolutely. And we see this a lot with allergies to food, allergies to environment, and we're just helping the whole system be much less reactive. But of course, with something like Crohn's, it is the starting point, the reason the disease develops in the first place can have several different start points, can't it? Several reasons for this to happen.
Yeah, and I mean this particular guy, I don't want to say too much about it because I like your audience to have the fun of seeing it for the first time. But he was partly weighed down by an emotional baggage, so there was a lot of that. But there was also a kind of he'd had a particular some kind of food poisoning event that had kind of triggered this, and I suppose maybe it was just a combination of that. It can be a combination, of course, of many different things, including your own medical history, all the drugs and the hormones you've perhaps been taking in the past. It can be your family's medical history can predispose. It can be just environmental exposure, of course. It can be injuries. It can be so many. And obviously, as you know, Mary, part of our job is like a detective, really, and establishing some kind of timeline and an understanding of what has caused what and what has triggered what. So that's part of the job.
Yeah, it's just, oh well, haven't we got the best job in the world? Because we've got so much variation, so much to be deciphering and working through. But let's go to this video. Let's find out what happened.
Yeah, very good. Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan Stallick. I'm a professional homeopath. I've been practicing homeopathy for about almost 40 years now. I'm delighted to have Tim, who's here. He's a recent patient that I've been treating, and he's very kindly agreed to come and talk about the transformative power in his own real life experience of how homeopathy affected him. So Tim, how old are you, and what do you do for work?
I'm 53, and I do an office job, doing IT stuff, IT support things. So it's not very exciting. It's sat behind a desk for minimum of 8 hours a day.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you. And so what was your life before homeopathy? What were the challenges you were facing, especially related to, of course, Crohn's disease? So what kind of things were you facing?
Well, in 2020, just before the pandemic, I went to a carvery in Wimbledon and I got dysentery. And it was so bad, I ended up in hospital on an IV drip with ciprofloxacin, which is one of the really bad heavy duty antibiotics, caused a lot of problems. And it triggered Crohn's disease in me. So uh, I think I was in hospital about 6 times afterwards. Heart palpitations, and I had a bleeding ulcer, and things just got worse and worse and worse. Now, I'm also a master herbalist, and I've been trying to treat it with herbs for several years, and I kind of kept it at bay. Once I got onto this one remedy, slippery
What
elm.
yeah, a slippery elm, the main thing that's
Slippery elm, yeah, I had to have it at least 3 times a day. Otherwise, I was, sort of on the loo up to 25 times a day. And
wow.
certain foods would trigger me and I was bleeding internally. So there was a lot of blood and it would just wipe me out. I was in bed for better part of, well, just over 2 years, I think, just not really able to live.
Okay, one of the things I remember, of course, was the huge effects on your diet, which was so limited. So what foods couldn't you eat?
Uh
Sensitivities.
So the worst things for me were lemon. So all citrus went out the window. Anything with even the tiniest amount of lemon in it would put me into bed for 5 or 6 days. So like hummus with a little bit of fresh lemon juice, that would put me in bed for 4 or 5 days.
Right.
I
Yeah.
had to be really, really careful. Someone gave me a little bit of a passion fruit yogurt. I was in bed for 2 weeks with that one. I only had a tablespoon for breakfast when I was staying over somewhere. And we looked on the ingredients, and there was concentrated lemon juice in it. So lentils would really set me off. Couldn't have anything with lentils, anything with high fiber, chili, caffeine, chocolate was terrible for me. All dairy. So ended up going gluten free and dairy free, no tomatoes, no. The list is just, and eggs were one of the worst things. Eggs, even it was. I thought it would be the egg yolk, but it was the egg white that really set me off. So it was really restrictive. I basically couldn't go out to any restaurant. I couldn't go over to eat at anyone's home. If I did go and stay somewhere, I had to bring my own food or plan like a food delivery. Like I go down to my friend's place in the seaside and I'd have to bring things with me to make sure that I didn't end up in bed those days that I was away.
So in terms of just enjoying life, it
No
completely
travel, no sports, couldn't really go out because I had to be near a loo all the time.
right. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just felt so awful. I was really drained, and I lost. I mean, with Crohn's, you can easily lose 30, 35 pounds in six
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
So there are times when I would eat like king prawns were the thing that was safest for me, and I would eat like a king prawn every other day, just one. So I
Yeah.
got very, very thin, and then
Yes.
when you could eat, you'd put some weight back on and hope that it didn't happen again. So it was really terrible. No, I haven't left the country for a couple of years because I couldn't get on a plane or face going to a hotel and then getting sick from the water or the food. It just wasn't worth it.
In fact, I mean, I actually have some personal experience of Crohn's disease. That my mother suffered from Crohn's, or suffering from a young age. She had Crohn's, but she, of course, in those days, and she didn't know anything about homeopathy, and she, had an operation, of course, they take a part of your bowel out,
Yeah.
and of course that then results in lifelong diarrhea and all kinds of other sort of
Yeah.
issues. So thankfully, you hadn't gone down that route, so you still were intact. So that was a good thing. Now, how did you come across homeopathy then, and what sort of piqued your interest in that?
Well, funny enough, I started to study homeopathy years ago, but the homeopathic college closed down sort of a year and a half into study. So I switched to herbs and naturopathy,
I see.
and I've always used homeopathy. I mean, from I think from age 20 or so. So I know what the powers are. I know that it can just, it doesn't matter what conventional medicine tells you this is incurable or you can never be able to treat this. Homeopathy can just turn it around on, right on the.
So what I mean, did you have initial expectations, when deciding to try homeopathy, or what were your?
No, I had a completely open mind, but I just told myself, homeopathy is going to cure this. I know it.
Oh, Right.
I know it because I had tried everything else, and I told the GPs that they will never put me on horrible drugs or take part of my body away because that's not what was needed to heal me.
So
Clearly, because it's happened.
you had tremendous faith, actually. I mean, in spite of horrendous, symptoms and experience of the disease, you had enormous faith, which I'm sure was also, well, helpful, at least in leading you down a good path for you.
I think that, because homeopathy is energy, you have got to go into it with good energy. You have to believe that this is going to work with me. My body is going to accept this and agree with it
I will
and
just
work with it.
I will just say, though, that because I've treated, although faith is a lovely thing, I have treated patients who did not believe in it, who came because their wife sent them to me.
This is true.
And they had no belief in it whatsoever, and they did incredibly well. So just to say that you don't have to have that.
This is true, but it probably helps.
Yeah, it was good
to
though.
want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the pre-treatment process in your experience? And were there initial reactions or changes you noticed, or what was the treatment process?
Well, we started off by trying some things that just it caused a lot of emotional release in me because I had some childhood trauma that from grief that still hadn't completely been resolved. That was holding me back from some other areas of my life. And so it brought those things to the surface and resolved them, but it didn't touch any of the physical Crohn's related, the dietary symptoms. So,
I mean, you mentioned, that's obviously we're treating the whole person. So the emotional aspect is incredibly important. So even though that remedy didn't touch the Crohn's, but so what did you come away with though from that remedy, and what process did you go through? That was quite an emotional release, I believe.
Yeah, so it sort of came in the middle of the night in dream form, like sort of like a lucid dream that then I actually woke because of it and I remembered all of it. So it was the death of a grandmother who ended up raising me because my mum gave me to my grandparents, and when she passed, it was really, really difficult for me. And I remember with the remedy, with that dream, I was sort of back there at the coffin, and I saw all of these old memories come up and symbols and things, and they all meant something to me. And I sobbed and I sobbed. I hadn't ever released it. I hadn't cried.
Right.
And so, 33, 34 years later, there I am, releasing it. So it was quite powerful.
And then after that, which is, that was amazing. I mean, that was great. But obviously, we did want to really do something with the Crohn's disease. That was the main reason why you came to see me. And you had I gave you another remedy, and then you had quite a reaction, didn't you, to that? Can you describe?
Oh yeah, it was the Jonenium or something. It was, and then I looked it up before I took it. I said, oh, it's meant for Crohn's disease, and I thought, oh wow, okay, so let's take this. I took that one pill in the morning, and by evening, I had such a return of symptoms. I was in agony. I ended up taking painkillers for a couple of days, but I knew that homeopathy will often bring a return of symptoms, bring something to the surface. And so I just stuck with it. I mean, I didn't have a choice. There was no way to stop it once it was put into motion. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I've really I've gone and stirred this up now. And I think it took about 5 days, and then it all just disappeared. And I thought, okay, I mean, just as suddenly as it started, it disappeared.
So I'm just going to go on. I just want to explain to the viewers that remedies can bring back old symptoms. And in fact, these symptoms, I believe, were very similar to what you'd experienced when you first got the dysentery.
Absolutely. It was the doubling over in pain, sweating, laying in bed. The cramping was really, really terrible. But there was no blood. I wasn't bleeding inside. It didn't cause me to bleed, but all of the symptoms associated with a really bad episode that would typically include bleeding were there. All the pain and the discomfort, the sweating, the heart palpitation, and just completely exhausted.
And
after a couple of days of this.
Okay, just to explain again, this is the way the body sometimes needs to process something, and it's almost like it hasn't fully processed the original impetus or the original disease that you suffer. You've actually only partially resolved that, and so the remedy actually fully resolves that, and it gets the body to really go through that. It's not normally actually quite as intense as you experience. Most people get a sort of like a spring clean effect. They'll get a sort of like a sweating or a little bit of diarrhea or whatever. But you had quite intense,
But Crohn's disease is it's a pretty intense, horrible thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like, most other things. It is very uncomfortable. But yeah, I did have quite a reaction, and then it just stopped. So I thought, you know what? I had such a reaction to it. I'm going to try foods that trigger me. And I
Right.
did. And I had chorizo, which would normally knock me
Well,
out
hang on.
because,
Let's just, because I got I think an email from you saying I've just eaten lasagna with tomatoes. I think that was the first
oh,
one.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just had lasagna with tomatoes, and you said, and all I got was a pimple on my chin.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. It was, yeah. Because normally the tomato, that was a no-no. I couldn't have red meat. I couldn't have the cheese. I couldn't have the noodles. And I'm from a Sicilian family, so some friends like me to cook lasagna for them all the time, and so I made one, and I thought I'm going to try a little bit of this one because it was so nice. It looked so nice, and it was wonderful, and I didn't have any reaction at all. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, well, we've definitely hit on something here.
What would that have done then in the old days then, before the homeopathy?
I would have bled. I would have had bleeding, and I would have been in bed for a couple of weeks. Well,
Right.
at least a week. Yeah.
Right.
So
Amazing.
there would have been a considerable punishment for doing that, for trying it.
Then
And then I
what?
thought, wow, I can do this. Let me try my old enemy lentils. So I got some of these lentil crisp things. I went to the office. I'm back at work at the office and everything. And instead of, there's one of the few things that I could have is like salted crisps. And I thought, well, I'll try these lentil chips. And I had in the entire bag. Nothing happened at all.
You
So the
described that as
next day,
horror food, didn't you?
yeah, it was one of the worst things ever. And then I thought, okay, right, I'm going to try lemon because that would definitely put me in bed for a couple of weeks. So I made um, fresh guacamole and put lots of lemon in it and a little bit of chili, and nothing happened.
Wow.
So I thought, wow, this is amazing. I am actually eating everything that I couldn't eat before. The only
That's
thing I haven't tried yet is alcohol, but I mean, I'm
right.
not really fussed
That's
about that. So yeah, but I did say the other day, I think, wow, I think I really fancy a glass of wine, and I bet I could probably tolerate that now. In fact, I'm sure I could.
I'll be interested to hear. So how's your life changed post, this treatment, and physically and
Oh my
emotionally?
goodness, I have been eating three meals, sometimes four a day, just because I can. I mean, for 2 years, I was on this really bland, restrictive diet, and I've been wanting to have flavor. I've been wanting to have some pleasure and things. I've been to a couple of restaurants. I'm going out. I'm far more active because I don't have to worry about being near a toilet all the time.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's just been so liberating. It's like I've got my life back, and people have told me, "Wow, you've really got your life back. You've got a spark in your eyes. You've got there's a smile in your voice, and there really is. I'm really ready to live again. I'm making plans to travel, so it's game on again."
That's fantastic. That's so good to hear. So what would you say? Obviously, there may be people out there now, like watching this video, who are kind of a little bit skeptical about homeopathy. Obviously, there are a lot of homeopathy skeptics out there. So, what would you say to somebody who's a little bit skeptical about considering
Well, look,
homeopathy treatment
the
option?
NHS wanted to remove part of my colon. They wanted to cut me open and remove part of me, and it wouldn't have fixed anything, and it wouldn't have stopped any of the bleeding. Herbs only took it part of the way, but I was on slippery elm for over a year, and it was like a plaster. And
Yes.
look at what homeopathy did. One time, well, I did repeat it after 7 days. You asked me to repeat it, and I had 2 days of discomfort, and then completely gone. So, two little pills have given me back my old life.
Yeah.
I'm free. I'm liberated. It really it works with the body's energy to restore health.
And I should say,
Wonderful.
I mean, it's not always, when you have somebody with multiple sensitivities like you had, it's not always easy, even with homeopathy, to get to the root of that and to really cause a major shift. So, but so it's been a revelation for me as well that you've had this wonderful reaction and that you're so much improved. So, any sort of final words of reflection or anything else you'd like to share before we finish this video?
Um, I mean, I'm just testament to how homeopathy can completely change someone's state of health. Absolutely took me from
Fine.
being a
Well,
prisoner in my own body
yeah.
to being liberated and restored to my natural state of health. I mean, it's just wonderful. I'm also very surprised. I didn't think that it was going to happen. This one little pill, and then about 3 days into all of this, the awful initial return of symptoms, I thought it's really doing something. I'll tell you what. So then I kind of knew that we hit on something big.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I always tell patients that to expect. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes people just sail through and they just get better. Sometimes, though, the body does need to, it's like process something, and so it's not quite normally as intense. But when something like that happens, it actually is a really good sign. And when people, I mean, people hate it when I say, "Oh, great, you've got an aggravation. This is a really good sign." But it's true, and it's often followed by amazing relief, and yeah, so it's a good thing. So look, I want to thank you, Tim, for sharing your experience. It's been a real pleasure, and it is a pleasure treating you and seeing your changes, and that's been
I
fantastic.
want to thank you for restoring my health. I mean, uh, I was just a shell of a human, and now I'm back in the driver's seat again. I want to thank you for doing this wonderful work with me. Thank you so much.
Very, very welcome. And anyone who's interested in homeopathy and wants to maybe find out a little bit more, I do offer actually a free 30-minute chat where you can just tell me all your issues, and we can go into it and see whether maybe homeopathy would be a suitable path for you. So there'll be a link in the below the video, and do feel free to book in for this free session, introductory session. Thanks once again, Tim, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure I'll be seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye bye.
Wow, what a story. Well done.
It was. I have to say, I was very chuffed.
Yeah,
So wonderful, really wonderful.
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about those remedies, because of course, if we have many people with the same diagnosis, they might all have a different remedy, and the remedies are very, very carefully chosen on the symptom picture, on what has been happening, where it's been coming from. And you use some quite different remedies there, remedies that aren't commonly used.
Yes, yeah. I mean, partly this is my bent really. I enjoy discovering new remedies. It's just the way my mind works. But in his case, I'd learnt about this remedy, which is made from cod liver oil, which sounds like a fairly benign, just a very neutral kind of thing, but it has a particular themes associated with it, which include someone who has been ripped off in their life and feels bad about it, maybe is angry with themselves for allowing themselves, but there's often a history. It's almost like their skin, with all fish remedies, there's this idea of sort of thin skin. Things kind of come in and out, and they don't have control, or they give away too much. There's that sort of aspect, that idea in all the fish remedies, but particularly in cod liver oil, there's a sort of there's all sorts of things about digestion and nutrition, which obviously in his case was crucial.
Yeah.
But there is this thing about feeling somebody has taken something from you really, or ripped you off, or betrayed you badly in some sort of way, and you've given too much. And this is what's happened in his past, actually. And he had such a strong reaction to this remedy. I mean, a real healing crisis where he really just forgave all his relatives and partners who had sort of done bad to him, and he said it was just like a weight being lifted. But that remedy didn't actually do anything for the physical things. It really helped him emotionally, and I think that had to be done as well. It's not just, when we're treating someone, as you know, it's not just the physicals we're looking at the whole picture, the mental, the emotional, and the physical, and it all, it's about we're treating the whole person and their experience of life, not just the physical symptoms. So that was one remedy. So the cod liver oil was one remedy, and then the remedy which really just was hugely influential and really made a difference to the actual Crohn's disease symptoms was a remedy called Joninum, and this is one of a collection of remedies which we call, as you know, called nosodes. And nosodes can sound a little bit strange to people who don't know about homeopathy, because a lot of people think, oh, homeopathy, that's about plants, isn't it? It's like herbal medicine. And of course it's not. And we use all kinds of strange things to treat people. And because Samuel Hahnemann, who discovered homeopathy in 1800 or so, found that the principle of like cures like didn't just apply to plants, but applied to any substance you could name. So we do use snake venoms, we do use spider venoms, and nosodes are a category of remedy made from diseased tissue. And it sounds horrible, and people sometimes balk at that. I suppose in some ways it's a little bit similar to vaccination, from that point of view, and you could say there's some similarity. But of course, in homeopathy, we don't use raw material. All these kind of horrible disease tissues are diluted until there's nothing left material in the actual remedy. So, but anyway, the remedy that I gave him was made from a cousin of tubercular tissue. So it was actually made from, it's called Paratuberculosis. And it's a kind of TB that tends to affect animals, actually. But whereas TB affects the lungs, paratuberculosis really goes for the gut, the digestive system. And my good colleague and friend, Lou Klein, proved this remedy. So he tested the remedy to find out the picture how it could be applied in practice. And he discovered this connection with Crohn's disease. And so that's, it's become known a little bit as the Crohn's nosode. I hadn't used it before, but I did use it here, and it just worked an absolute treat. So it was wonderful.
Yeah. And it's just so interesting learning about that. And of course now the opportunity, we'll know that we'll have a lot of homeopaths coming forward and saying, okay, we need to know more about this, because we know how useful tuberculinum is in our practice. It is one of the most used remedies, I would say. And so to find a gut equivalent is really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a lot more about your use of this remedy, and of course for me to have some in my practice so that I can use it too. And my clients will be listening here and saying, yes, Mary, yes, let's hear some more about this. So I'm hoping that you can come back another time and actually go through this remedy, perhaps, and because you are so good at finding the new remedies. You are very, very good at looking at very in-depth pictures and explaining that to homeopaths as well. So we have got an opportunity for learning coming up, I can see.
Yeah, Absolutely. It excites me basically. I mean, and it just means that there's never a dull moment. There's never, homeopathy is just full of, I mean, if I had to use the same 50 remedies over and over again, well, I would still enjoy it actually, to be honest, but it just makes it so much more interesting. And,
Yes.
everyone, people are just this evolving, incredible sort of evolving
Yes, yeah.
phenomenon. This is wonderful.
And what I love about learning about the nosodes is how disease has changed over the centuries, and how the same symptoms come up in the different diseases as we move through time. And I do think that homeopathy kind of knows all this, and it just brings the patterns to life that disease goes through in cycler process through time.
That's right, exactly. So obviously, yeah, we were talking, I think, before this podcast about people's, that people will come with Crohn's disease, but they don't, people shouldn't think, oh, that's great. The Joninum, this remedy is the cure-all for Crohn's disease. It's not. It's, this was tailored to this particular individual patient. 6 people could come with Crohn's disease and they will all need different remedies. And it's just the way, homeopathy has to be individualized to the individual. We're treating the person, not
the diagnosis. That's right. And the fact that we are putting together the emotional aspect of the reactions to trauma, to whatever's happening in life, as well as those physical aspects. So we know that we haven't, homeopathy has to be kept separate, in that we don't distinguish. We're looking exactly at the symptoms and then matching those to the remedies. So
that's right. I mean, one of the the ways that homeopathy has developed, though, I suppose, partly because in Hahnemann's day there was no such thing as psychology, really. I mean, it was just it was a very, very basic. There was depression and there was anxiety, I think, and that was it, really. But as the century progressed and as we come into the 20th century, psychology starts to become part of our experience. Our knowledge of humans involves understanding the more nuanced aspects of psychology. And homeopathy has kind of embraced this. And so a lot of the work that has been done more recently is looking at not just symptoms, but sort of themes, really, and themes in we're often treating people's situations in their life. It's not just a symptom anymore, but it's a more, because that's the way people are developing in a way. They, especially with city living. I think, I treated, I was in Africa for a little while treating tribes people in the field. We literally go into the field and set up a table and there were much simpler pictures and much more simple remedies required, because the living is close to the earth and things are much simpler lifestyle. But with city living and Western Europe and America, people are in their heads a lot more, and there's a lot more of a sort of spiritual development aspect. And that has to be embraced by homeopathy. We can't just keep on, the same old remedies don't always work for those sort of new conditions to get the results we want. So,
yeah, absolutely right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure, and congratulations with your client there. Such a good story and such good feedback for people to hear about what actually homeopathy can do. And what I particularly loved was that he was quite open about the other things that he'd tried, and able to say, well, actually homeopathy did this bit and I was able to do this bit with something else. And that is really, really useful to us and to everybody listening who perhaps might want to move on to the next stage and start looking at addressing the cause of their diagnosis.
Excellent. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming in and discussing this case with us. It is so important that we are reminded of the wonders of homeopathy and how far healing can actually take place. Just been amazing. Thank you so much. Next week, I'm going to be talking to Kim Elliott about the new film, Introducing Homeopathy. It's very exciting. It's going to be launched in April this year, and Kim Elliott is organising this film. He is a world-renowned speaker and homeopathic coach, and he's just got so much to share. It's so interesting. So find out more about the film, find out how you can help launch this film, and find out how we can get homeopathy just around the world. I do hope you've enjoyed these episodes, and I do hope you can subscribe to our channels. Now, there are various ways for you to listen to our podcast or watch it on video on YouTube. So whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, please do subscribe and please do leave us a review. If you leave us a review on these platforms, then more people will see our podcast. We just want more people to share the joy of homeopathy. It's a choice that everybody should know about. Please do everything you can to help us help more people.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to listening to our next one. Please don't forget to follow our podcast on your chosen channel, and please do leave us a review so we can continue to share homeopathy with as many people as possible. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us on any of our social platforms mentioned in the show notes. We at Homeopathy247 hope to empower you on your natural health journey.